Hey guys, what's going on? The MMA breakdown is back. We're doing predictions for UFC Fight Night 117, St. Preux versus Okami. I'm sorry for missing the last several events. I owe you guys an apology. I know you guys were asking, with each event that I missed, was I going to do a video? What was going on? And I just got lazy, got content, got really comfortable with that 4 week layoff we had between the Mexico City card and the Struve Volkov Fight Night card. It had been such a long summer, jam packed with UFC events, that I just was really relishing in that time off. And, I extended my absence a little longer than I had intended, but it was for the best. I can promise you guys that. I feel a lot better now having missed those last three events. And really, it's just been a long 3 years. I haven't missed an event, I believe, since fall of 2014. So going on 3 years now of just being consistent, sticking to this routine, getting those videos in almost every week. It just started to overwhelm me and control my life. I felt like there was a dragon inside of me and I wasn't myself anymore. So I just needed to take a step back, break the cycle, step out of the cage, and just kind of do something, I guess, that you would consider bad or wrong for a bit there. This is like John Jones crashing the Bentley. He said that, trying to uphold that perfect image of himself was just really starting to weigh heavily on him. And when he crashed the Bentley, it liberated him. And that's what missing these couple of events after 3 years of not missing any has really done for me. I feel renewed. I want to, come back at this hard. I want to go ham with this. Want to make accurate predictions and make money with you guys. If you look at my Capper Tech, my Bet MMA Tips profile, you'll see I'm like something crazy, like -5, 7,000% ROI, something like that. But just know that those aren't the real numbers. I didn't quite know what I was doing. With the calculations, I didn't understand betting units at first, but I got all that, down to a science now. I got my spreadsheet with all the accurate numbers, which I'll share with you guys at some point, probably around the new year for that 6 month mark, since I've started betting. And I am down. This has definitely turned out to be much harder than I initially thought, and I really have a newfound respect for those guys who can consistently profit from making picks. But yeah, I'm down, but I'm not quitting, and I'm planning to come back, get in the black, and make money with you guys. I really feel that I was one of the reasons I was put on this earth was to make predictions with you guys. So I want to, keep my record of being in the top 500 on Pick'em. I want to be profitable by the end of the year with my picks. And I think that's it. So thank you guys if you've stuck with me. And let's do picks for UFC Fight Night 117. St. Preux versus Okami. All right, so first fight, Luke Jumo versus Shinsho Anzai. I really like Jumo here. I think it's pretty cut and dry. Jumo looks like a guy who can be a UFC mainstay, whereas Shinsho Anzai, to me, has not proven that he even belongs in the UFC, even at a lower level. His win over Roger Zapata, he was winning the fight, but it still wasn't a pretty performance for him, and really kind of won from a freak injury. Got knocked out by Alberto Mina in his debut, and Jumo, while he's not a guy that really sets the world on fire, he at least looks like a precise, accurate, composed striker took out I think a decent fighter, at least a guy who posed more of a threat than Anzai and Dominique Steele. Really controlled that fight. He is a guy who not too long ago almost got put out by Vic Grujic, a UFC cast off, but I don't see Anzai as a threat here. I know things always get a little weird overseas, especially in Asia, with home fighters taking on Americans or guys outside of the country, but I really see Jumo as a higher level, UFC level MMA fighter, and Anzai is not. So I think Jumo wins this with more technical striking, basically. So, and maybe even by knockout, because again, Anzai, we saw him knocked out by Alberto Mina, and Jumo's a sharp striker. So, yeah, I really like Jumo. He's the favorite. The odds I'm looking at right now on 5 dimes, he's minus 245. I do think he's worth a single bet. I wouldn't, bet the house on him. Like I said, things can go awry overseas in Japan with the hometown guys. But yeah, I do like him here, and I actually parlayed him with a couple of other fighters. I'll reveal them when we get to those fights. But I think he's worth a look here. So yeah, I really like Jumo, and I'm taking him by decision. Chan Mi Jeon versus Yori Kondo. Initially, I was going to take Jeon here. I liked her debut performance against J.J. Aldrich. Thought she acquitted herself pretty well as a decent kickboxer. And Yori Kondo, from the footage I've seen, really kind of an inactive fighter early on in fights. Gets outworked, but just has a knack for finding her way into the clinch, and from there really takes over and dominates. And when she can get the fight to the ground, that's when she's really dangerous and can finish it. And Jeon, while I think she's more athletic, she'll put out more volume early here. If she couldn't even keep up the pace and be dominant enough against J.J. Aldrich, who's not really a dangerous fighter, I think that someone who does have a knack for getting finishes like Kondo will be able to get inside, whether the early storm, get past the volume and maybe technique difference, and get it in the clinch, apply her strength there and on the ground, and maybe get a finish. So I'm going to take Kondo. Might take her by decision, actually. It's a weird fight. Still 2 unknown fighters. This is not one I would touch at all when it comes to betting, but I do like Kondo here. All right, Daichi Abe versus Hyun-Gyu Lim. This is an interesting one. I think Daichi Abe is definitely capable of winning the fight. I think that's a real possibility. Hyun-Gyu Lim, big, massive guy. He's got a massive physique for the welterweight division. But we saw against Mike Perry, a newcomer can come in and just knock his head off. And Daichi Abe is a powerful striker, has a knack for getting those knockouts, has, I think, much straighter and tighter punches than Hyun-Gyu Lim. Hyun-Gyu Lim loves to run in, blitz with winging those wide hooks. And if he does that a little too recklessly, I think that Abe does stand a chance of putting him out. But in watching Abe's footage, does look like a guy who's really been bolstered by fighting some pretty weak competition. Not in all of his fights does he go out and immediately starch his opponent. And he does appear hittable, and doesn't appear all that lightning fast with his hands. I just think a guy like Lim, who I expect to have a massive size advantage here. I haven't seen them, uh, stack up face to face yet, but once I see that, I think we're going to see a pretty big size discrepancy there. I think that Lim's too big, too much experience in the big show, and still a really dangerous guy who, when he loses, it doesn't look good, but it's still to guys like Neil Magny, Mike Perry. These are guys who we know are capable UFC level fighters. Whereas Abe is just a guy coming in from a questionable circuit, fighting really questionable competition, and who doesn't look like a complete world beater yet. So I do think there's that chance that he wins. If you're looking to just make a fun parlay with minimal risk, I think throwing Abe in there, not a wise move, but could be a risk worth taking. It could pay off. He's only a plus 105 underdog right now, but I think Lim is the safer, wiser pick here. He's the guy we know better, and I like him here. I'm going to take him to get a finish. All right, Jussier Formiga versus Ulka Sasaki. I like Formiga here. He should be the favorite on paper. I think he's got he is a decorated jiu-jitsu guy, but as far as MMA goes, I still think he has clearly the jiu-jitsu chops to take out Ulka Sasaki. But I definitely don't think that Formiga is a justifiable minus 450 favorite. Ulka Sasaki has really looked better and better. Even though he was getting dominated by Justin Scoggins, even though he lost that fight against Wilson Hayes, those are two pretty serious opponents in the flyweight division. Gave Hayes a really tough fight, really pushed him to the brink and gave him all he could handle. Still got out grappled, but really hung tough with him in there. And then against Scoggins, the guy's just getting outclassed, but he's so tough and so determined, just pulls that finish out of nowhere late in the fight for a comeback win. And Formiga, we know he can be hurt. He's been knocked out by John Dodson, Joseph Benavidez, and Ulka Sasaki by no means is that kind of striker, but he's scrappy. He's going to have a size and reach advantage. I don't think it's out of the question that he hurts Formiga. And Formiga, when he wins, it's never all that dominantly. When his fight with Wilson Hayes was pretty close as well. His fight with Dustin Ortiz, he won, but he's not finishing guys. Really, he really kind of is able to win more on points by winning scrambles, control time, slightly edging guys in the striking. But I think he's going to do that to Sasaki. I think Sasaki is going to be too willing to engage him on the mat, where Formiga should definitely have the chops, have the grappling advantage. And also, if you remember back to Sasaki's, I think, second UFC fight when he took on Leandro Issa, just got dominated and completely outworked, got taken to the woodshed on the mat by a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu decorated grappler, and ended up getting submitted in that fight. So if Issa could do that, I think Formiga maybe won't get the finish because he doesn't have a track record of doing so, but can at least win scrambles on the ground. So I'm taking Formiga. I don't like those minus 450 odds. I wouldn't put a big single bet on him, but that's my pick. I'm going to take him to win by decision. All right, Alex Morono versus Keita Nakamura. Another interesting one, and I like Nakamura here. Morono, even though he's managed to get these kind of bizarre wins that it doesn't seem he should ever be able to get, like the win over James Muntazri, even the win over Kyle Noak. I still think he just lacks too much in technique, and Nakamura, he's had some. He had that last loss against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos but Dos Santos really is a much more technical striker than Alex Morono and a more dangerous fighter as well. But even in that fight, from the opening bell, Nakamura got Zaleski down, was working the rear naked choke, had him in a pretty compromised position. And other than that, has submission wins over Li Jinglang, Kyle Noak. The guy's not a bad fighter. Both of those fights, he was down, he was getting beat, but the guy's a dangerous grappler, really scrappy and aggressive, and even on the feet can make stuff happen. Hit that head kick on Kyle Noak to put him out, and eventually got back mount and finished him off. So dangerous fighter. Morono just seems a little too willing to be drawn into a brawl and kind of fight at an even-keeled pace, where his opponent can really, match him strike for strike, and I think Nakamura is a little too dangerous for that. And also, it being in Japan, I think Nakamura is going to have, some extra confidence and motivation here, so got to go with Nakamura. All right, Charles Rosa versus Mizuto Hirota. And kind of funny that Nakamura and Hirota are both underdogs, but I think especially this fight, Hirota being a plus 165 underdog, I think that's people, MMA fans, just kind of writing off Japanese UFC fighters. Hirota is no elite fighter, but Rosa, I think, is really overrated. Anytime fans see an American wrestler, they get really excited, but Rosa to me is just kind of a pretty overrated fighter with a limited skill set, does have some wrestling, and probably his stock is raised a little too much because he had that win over Seaver, had a really close fight with Yair Rodriguez, close, on a points basis, but on the feet pretty much got dominated in that fight. But Hirota is a really underrated fighter, really had a dominant performance over Cole Miller, really showed strong grappling, strong top position. And then I thought he showed up in the Alex Volkanovski fight, took at least one round off of him, on the feet. The guy's a decent enough striker to, hang with guys, and Volkanovski, I think, is a much more aggressive striker than Rosa, who's a bigger threat. Rosa really, I think, can hit some takedowns, maybe attempt some submissions, and that's about it. I thought the guy should have lost his fight against Kyle Bochniak, really did very little of significance in that fight. Got totally ran over by Shane Burgos. I'm not high on Rosa. Hirota has been looking pretty good in his last couple of fights. I think he outworks Rosa, and again, it being in Japan, I think he'll benefit from fighting at home, the confidence, motivation. Rosa really doesn't have many credible wins. I mean, yeah, he beat Seaver on short notice, but that was 3 years ago at this point, and other than that, had a submission win over Sean Soriano, but, like I said, got destroyed by Burgos. I didn't think he won against Kyle Bochniak. I think he's overrated, so I got to go with Mizuto Hirota here. And not saying that's a lock by any means. Hirota had a pretty even fight with Teruto Ishihara, who is not a skilled fighter. We've come to learn, but I like him, and I did throw him in a parlay here. All right, Rolando Dai versus Teruto Ishihara. This is a weird one that I just wouldn't really bet on. I actually was kind of tempted to take Dai here because I thought he was just the sharper, more technical striker, and we've really seen Ishihara's technique suffer in his last couple of fights, getting out wrestled very easily, very dominantly by Gray Maynard, and then really getting kind of outclassed on the feet by Artem Lobov. So I thought, Dai might have a shot here because this seemed like a really patient fighter who really picks his shots. But then I rewatched the Alex Caceres fight, and he just seems kind of patient to a fault. Really didn't do much, get much done in that fight. I mean, he hung in there, but got knocked down in that first round. Looked like Caceres was going to put him away in the first round. Did manage to take Caceres' back, but for the most part, just kind of got dominated in that fight. Really couldn't keep up with Caceres on the feet. So Ishihara, I think here should have the firepower advantage. While he doesn't really come forward all that much, is much more of a counter striker, and with Dai really sitting back, really patient as well in his fights, I think this could kind of be a stinker. Ishihara might not get that knockout, but I do think overall, he just is more aggressive, gets after it more, and that really counts for a lot in MMA. So I'm taking Ishihara. All right, Gokhan Saki versus Henrique da Silva. Luis Henrique da Silva. Yeah, I'm taking Saki. K1 guy, and I think had only one MMA fight back in 2006 or something. And for that reason, I can't say that he's a lock. I really like to take him. I'd really like to see him as that. It's tempting to really bet on him because Luis Henrique da Silva is just a punching bag. There's no other way to say it. This guy, they're just using him to build everyone. Wasn't the guy's name? Cody Johnson, I think. Jan Kutalaba, even Paul Craig, who, after that first fight with Da Silva, looked pretty bad against Tyson Pedro and Khalil Roundtree, and he actually looked pretty good against Da Silva, so that really says something. But the reason I can't put all my confidence in Saki here is because, he's not an MMA fighter. He's a K1 guy. We've seen Alistair Overeem, a very successful K1 guy. Not that I know anything about K1, but, champion or whatever he was. He comes over, gets knocked out by all these guys who have nowhere near the striking ability that he has. Bigfoot Silva, Travis Brown, Ben Rothwell, for crying out loud. So just being capable in K1 and Henrique da Silva being a punching bag, I don't think that's enough for me to say, da Silva has no chance here. That combined with the fact that Saki in his last K1 bout looked out of shape, and if you go look up that fight on YouTube, go to the comments, you'll see some people questioning his physique, his age, and in MMA where guys can take you down, if you don't knock Da Silva, if he doesn't knock Da Silva out, he sticks around, his gas tank fades. Da Silva could take over late in the fight. We saw that when he fought a much more athletic, more aggressive fighter who tried to take him out early when he fought, what was the guy's name? I'm blanking, but I think another, Jonathan Wilson. He finished him late in that fight. It was a war of attrition. So same thing could happen here against Saki, but yeah, I think Saki being a skilled striker, Da Silva not. I think that Saki's going to win, but I stayed away from this one. All right, so Donghyun Kim versus Takanori Gomi. This to me is a really sad fight, and I would really caution against making a big bet on Kim here, especially at minus 380. I think that's really short-sighted and unjustified. Kim, we've seen him get into a couple of these really wild, reckless brawls where he can land some shots, rock his opponents, but he ultimately gets knocked out. Happened against Dominique Steele in his debut, and in his second fight against Marco Polo Reyes. Both of those guys knocked him out. Did manage to out-grapple Brendan O'Reilly, and I think that would be his path to victory here against Gomi. I mean, Gomi's chin is just terrible, and talk about a punching bag. This guy should have retired years ago. Everyone's just running over this guy, making a fool out of him. Joe Lozon, Jim Miller, John Tuck, Miles Jury, all these guys. He's pretty much losing in the same weight, all of them. But Kim is not, a rising prospect. He's not anything like that. This is a much more winnable fight for Gomi, and if it stays on the feet, if Kim brawls with him, I think Gomi has more craft to his style of brawling and definitely stands a chance of knocking Kim out. But if Kim plays it smart, out-grapples Gomi, I think he could certainly get the win. Fuck it, I think I have to take Gomi here because I think Kim is going to try to play to the crowd, let his emotions get the better of him. I think he's going to brawl with Gomi. I do, so fuck it, I have to take Gomi. I'm taking Gomi by knockout, so change my pick mid-prediction there, but beating Brendan O'Reilly really doesn't count for anything, and Dominique Steele, Marco Polo Reyes, not the best talents, not very high up in the rankings. Getting knocked out by both of those guys. Gomi fighting in Japan. I think Gomi can make it happen. So I'm not betting on this one. Wouldn't advise anyone betting, but I think I just have a feeling that Kim's going to try to put on a show here, and when he gets into these brawls, it doesn't work out very well for him. So I'm taking Gomi by knockout. All right, Claudia Gadelha versus Jessica Andrade. I'm taking Gadelha because she's the better fighter. She's a championship level fighter. Andrade is one of the elite in the division, but will always kind of hang around that that contender level status, but just below like the number 1, number 2 in the division, and that's where Gadelha is. I think it's kind of a weird matchup because they're both capable strikers. They both have strong wrestling, but Gadelha I think is just better in both areas. On the feet, Andrade packs more power in her punch, but I think is more of a brawler. Gadelha strikes with a little more technique, and as far as the wrestling goes, again, I think Andrade more of a power wrestler, kind of brute forces her way through everything, and Gadelha, again, I think is more technical, so I like Gadelha. Again, I think just a higher level overall MMA fighter than Andrade, but Andrade is always dangerous. She's tough, but Gadelha has fought the better competition, has wins over more meaningful competition, and just coming off of her first finish against Kovalkiewicz, that was pretty impressive. So yeah, I can't really justify it all that much in the style matchup here. They're both pretty similar. Both they're closely matched. Both high-level fighters, but I think Gadelha is just better and has proven herself against higher-level competition. So I'm going with Gadelha by decision. And even though this isn't one that I feel like I have a really good beat on as far as how the fight's going to play out, it's just one of those ones that that I feel like there's a clear pick here, again, just because of the status of each fighter. So I do think Gadelha would be worth a bet. Not everything, but I just have a really hard time seeing Andrade win this one. So what I did was actually put Gadelha in a parlay, and I'm going to go over all the bets I made after I give my prediction for the main event here. But yeah, I did place a bet on her. All right, and then the main event: Ovince St. Preux versus Yushin Okami. Ovince St. Preux, I think, is not the same guy as the guy who ran through Shogun and Patrick Cummins, and the guy who was on that tear. Even when he lost, or actually he lost to Glover. That was before the Shogun win, I believe. So yeah, but I think it's not the same guy since that Shogun win. Lost his fight to Jimmy Manuwa after that, and since then just seems to have kind of lost some confidence, I think. He's a lot more tentative in the Ozdemir, and even in his last fight against Marcos Rogerio de Lima, just seems to be fighting more technical, more composed, and while it worked for him in that De Lima fight, picked his moment to open up and got him to the ground, got the finish. I think it's kind of holding him back. I think his natural ability is a guy who really relies on his athleticism, really gets after it early, like the guy who knocked out Shogun, the guy who got taken down by Cummins but got right back up and caught him with the uppercut coming in on a takedown attempt. That's the guy I think St. Preux is. So I say all that to say that St. Preux definitely has his problems, is definitely lacking in fundamental striking technique, but is still a guy who has some extreme raw athletic gifts, and that really translates into his power. He's also a very powerful striker. That athleticism, that power, I think is absolutely going to get him past Okami here, and by finish, and I think without much resistance on Okami's part. Look, Okami, solid fighter, really good fundamentals, but just not a dangerous fighter. I mean, he's not finishing St. Preux here. He'd have to out-wrestle him for 5 rounds. And on short notice at light heavyweight, when this guy's been fighting at welterweight for a while in WSOF, I'm not sure when the last time is that he fought. Maybe you can look it up here. The last time he fought at middleweight was, but this is light heavyweight. It's not even middleweight, and OSP is a full-sized light heavyweight. Okami's not durable either. Was doing great against Tim Boach. Gets overwhelmed in that 3rd round. Jacare Souza totally destroyed this guy on the feet within a round. And then, the Anderson Silva fight, which, I know Silva was, he did that to everybody, but Okami, there's just going to be a big speed discrepancy here, big athleticism disadvantage on Okami's side, and he's not durable, he's not dangerous, so those two things combined, I just think St. Preux is able to land that kill shot at one point or another, and I don't think it's going to take him very long. So to me, I really think St. Preux by finish inside the distance is a lock here. I got that pick at, I think, under minus 250. Let's see what it is right now. Minus 270, so I got better odds than that a little bit, but I mean, I think it's a lock. If it doesn't happen, I'll be shocked. I place a significant bet, single bet on that prop. Same Preux inside the distance, but yeah. I want to see when the last time they fought at when the last time he fought at middleweight was, but yeah, I think that's about as safe a pick as it gets. I know there's this thing, this notion among fans that St. Preux is, he lacks fundamentals in his wrestling and his striking, and Okami's really, really solid there, kind of a Tim Duncan of MMA, but when you're not durable and not dangerous, it just doesn't work out, and it's why he hasn't been in the UFC for 3 or 4 years. All right, let's see here. Fought it, lost the middleweight title, and another case of him getting finished by David Branch in November of 2014. So almost 3 years ago since he's fought at middleweight on short notice, going up to light heavyweight. When he's been fighting at welterweight since October of 2015, almost 2 years. I think it's just completely lopsided a matchup. So I really like OSP here inside the distance. That's my pick. Also lost a decision to John Fitch. And OSP I think is an okay enough wrestler where he's not going to get dominated by Okami on the mat. And he's a lot bigger than John Fitch. He could probably take Okami down as well. And then Okami's last 4 wins just against total cans you've never heard of. So, yeah, OSP inside the distance. I don't think it gets much better than that. But now let me share with you the other bets I made that I kind of teased here. So, yeah, OSP inside the distance. Really like that one. I think you can't really go wrong there. And minus 270, I got a little better odds. I still think that's pretty good for something that's almost a sure bet. I mean, I will be totally shocked if Okami gets the win here. But then parlays, they've not been working out well for me. It's much harder to just pick a couple of fights right that you would actually be confident enough to bet on event after event. A lot of times what will happen is you'll be really confident about 3 fights. You might get 2 of them right and 1 of them's wrong, but you'll still do well for the event, or there were like 5 or 6 other fighters on the card you picked right, but none of those were the ones you were confident enough to bet in. So picking 3 that will actually turn out to be winners is pretty hard. So, and very few parlays that I bet on have actually won, have turned out to be profitable. I usually do 3-fighter parlays, and that's hardly ever been the outcome where those 3 fighters won. But so for that reason, I'm kind of moving away from parlays as my main approach to making money. I'm focusing more now on identifying one clear winner that I think is going to win, which in this case was OSP. That's where I put my money. But I do think there is a parlay that at least I was willing to make more of a significant bet on, and that's OSP, Gadelha, and Jumo. I think the riskiest fight out of that bunch is Jumo, Anzai, because Anzai is aggressive and Jumo's not. So I think there's at least a possibility there that Anzai could clip him. But I still like Jumo, so I made a somewhat of a significant bet on that, more than I would at this point, given my my history with parlays. Now I'm really just looking to really put minimal risk on any parlays, but this one I'm willing to take a chance on. So take that for what it's worth. But then I did a 6-fighter parlay where I just real minimal risk. I just put $5 on it, just hoping that it works out. But realizing that 6 fighters, obviously there's a lot of room for something to go wrong there. So the other parlay I did was and the parlay of OSP, Gadelha, and Jumo, I got it about plus 125, something like that. So good odds for 3 favorites, and 2 of them pretty big favorites. But I wouldn't bet the house on it. I put, like, for me, that was like a medium-sized bet. And just the parlay, just to take a chance on, take a flyer on, that I did was Jumo, Formiga, Nakamura, Hirota, both underdogs there, Nakamura and Hirota. So that's going to give you some real value if it pays off. Gadelha and Okami, is that 6? Yeah, 6. So, not looking to bet anything significant on that. I would never bet, for me, what is a significant amount on a parlay with any more than like 3 fighters. So just threw a little bit, $5, and it pays off like 75. So I think worth the risk. I think the Nakamura Morono fight is actually the riskiest, because both of those guys are really wild and a little bit reckless. I do like Hirota here. Not that he's a log, but I just really have this feeling that Rosa is overrated, and Hirota's the more consistent fighter to this point, and he's really gonna kind of expose that here. But I like Hirota in there. I really do, at underdog odds, to put a small bet on a parlay with him in there. I think that's worth it. But yeah, the Nakamura fight I think is risky. Formiga, Sasaki. I think Formiga should win, but there's some risk there. So I took a chance on him. And then Jumo, Gadelha, OSP. So really big payoff there for a really minimal risk bet. So yeah, hopefully that works out. But my main bets, OSP inside the distance, and then a parlay of OSP, Gadelha, and Jumo. All right, guys, thank you for watching. Glad to have taken this first step towards rehabilitation, getting back on the horse. Hopefully everything goes smoothly from here on out. But thank you, guys. Happy betting, and I will see you for the next event. Let's go make some money. See you guys.